Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cozy English Corner, where learning English is easy, cozy, and fun. I'm Mia.
And I'm Jack. We're really happy you're here today. Whether you're relaxing at home, taking a walk, or enjoying a cup of coffee, thanks for spending part of your day with us.
Jack, can I ask you something?
Of course. Although I have a feeling this is one of those questions that makes people think.
Maybe. Have you ever wanted to do something, but kept telling yourself it's probably too late now?
Honestly, yes, more than once. And there was one thing I thought about almost every week.
Now I'm interested. What was it?
A few years ago, there was a small music school near my office. Every Tuesday after work, I'd walk past the same building. There was a big window at the front. Sometimes I could hear someone playing the guitar, sometimes a piano. People inside looked relaxed. They were laughing, talking, learning together. Every single Tuesday, I'd slow down, look through the window, and think, I'd love to learn guitar.
That sounds like the perfect opportunity. So, why didn't you go inside?
Because another thought always arrived a second later. You're too late. You should have started years ago. Everyone inside is probably much better than you. After that, I'd keep walking.
Did anyone at the music school ever tell you those things?
Not once. Nobody even knew who I was. Those conversations were happening entirely inside my own head.
That's interesting. Sometimes the person who discourages us the most is ourselves.
Exactly. The strange thing is, I repeated that routine for almost 2 years. Every Tuesday, the same window, the same thoughts, the same decision. Maybe next time.
2 years?
I know, it sounds unbelievable now, but I think many people have their own version of that music school. Maybe it's learning English, starting a new hobby, changing careers, traveling somewhere they've always dreamed about. We tell ourselves, one day. And somehow, one day never arrives.
So today's conversation isn't really about learning the guitar.
Why do we convince ourselves that we've already missed our chance? Because looking back, I don't think age was the real reason.
You know, there's something I keep thinking about. For almost 2 years, nothing stopped you from walking into that music school. The door was open, the lessons were there, you wanted to learn. So what was really stopping you?
That's a good question. At the time, I would have said, my age. But now, I don't believe that anymore.
What changed your mind?
I realized I wasn't comparing myself to beginners. I was comparing myself to people who'd already been playing for years. I'd look through that window and see someone playing a beautiful song. I never thought, I wonder what their first lesson sounded like.
That's so true. We almost never compare ourselves to someone's beginning. We compare ourselves to where they are today.
And that's a comparison we can never win.
I think social media makes that feeling even stronger. You open your phone for 5 minutes, and suddenly someone your age is running a marathon. Someone else is speaking 3 languages, and another person has just started a successful business.
Then you close the app and think, what have I been doing with my life?
Exactly. For a moment, it feels like everyone else is moving forward, while you're standing still.
The funny thing is, everyone else's life probably feels ordinary to them. We only see the exciting moments. We don't see the years of practice, the mistakes, the days when they wanted to give up.
There's a really useful English word here. Timeline. Your timeline is the way your life develops over time. And no 2 timelines are exactly the same. Some people discover a passion at 16, others at 40. Neither one is wrong.
I wish I'd understood that sooner. I spent so much time watching other people's timelines that I almost forgot to build my own.
Another useful word we've already been using naturally is progress. People often imagine progress as something dramatic. A new job, perfect English, playing a beautiful song. But real progress is usually much quieter.
It's understanding one more sentence than yesterday, learning one new chord, reading 10 pages instead of none. Those little things don't seem impressive until they've been repeated for months.
That's why I love the expression, one step at a time. It reminds us that we don't have to finish the whole journey today. We only need to take the next step.
Looking back, comparison wasn't really telling me I was too late. It was telling me I was starting in the wrong place. I wanted to begin already looking experienced.
And that's impossible. Every expert was once a beginner. Every confident person once felt awkward. Every great musician once played the wrong notes.
So maybe comparison wasn't the biggest problem after all. Maybe it was the story I kept telling myself because of it.
You said something interesting. Comparison wasn't the biggest problem. It was the story you created because of it. I think that's worth talking about.
Definitely. The strange thing is, those stories sounded completely logical. I never stopped to question them. I simply believed them.
Can you remember some of them?
Oh, yes. I'm too old. I'm not musical. I'll probably embarrass myself. Everyone else will be better than me. The more I repeated those thoughts, the more they felt like facts.
I think that's something we all do. We hear our own thoughts so often that we forget they're only thoughts, not reality.
Exactly. If someone had asked me, "How do you know you're too old?" I honestly wouldn't have had an answer. I just felt it.
For me, it wasn't music. It was cooking.
Really? You always seem so confident in the kitchen.
Now I do. A few years ago, I avoided cooking whenever I could. I'd watch people online preparing beautiful meals in perfect kitchens. Everything looked effortless. Then I'd think, I could never do that. So instead, I'd order takeout.
A very practical solution.
For a while. Then, one evening, I opened my fridge and realized I already had everything I needed. I thought, why not give it a try? The result wasn't amazing. I accidentally added far too much salt.
So dinner came with a free glass of water.
Exactly. But the next meal was a little better. Then another. Without noticing, cooking slowly became part of my routine. Not because I suddenly became talented, because I kept practicing.
That reminds me of learning English. I've heard so many people say, "I'm just not good at languages." But sometimes they've only had one difficult conversation or one embarrassing moment, and they've decided that's who they are forever.
There's a useful expression that fits perfectly here. Hold yourself back. If you hold yourself back, you stop yourself from doing something, usually because of fear, doubt, or lack of confidence.
That's exactly what I was doing. The music school wasn't holding me back. My age wasn't holding me back. I was holding myself back.
Can I ask you something? If your best friend had said, I'm 45, do you think I'm too old to learn guitar? What would you have said?
I'd say, of course not. I'd probably tell them to sign up today.
That's interesting. You believed in your friend more than you believed in yourself.
When you say it like that, it sounds a little ridiculous.
Maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves wouldn't even make sense if someone else said them.
You're right.
So, we've talked about comparison, we've talked about the stories we tell ourselves, but I still have one question. If you finally realized those stories weren't completely true, why didn't you walk into the music school the very next Tuesday?
Because realizing something and doing something aren't always the same thing.
That's true. So what were you waiting for?
Confidence. I thought one day I'd wake up and suddenly feel ready. I'd look at the music school and think, today's the day. But that feeling never came. Every Tuesday felt exactly the same.
I think many people imagine life works like that. First you become confident, and then you begin.
That's exactly what I believed. I thought confidence came first. Now I think it's the other way around.
What do you mean?
Think about learning English. How many people say, I'll start speaking when I feel more confident.
I've heard that hundreds of times.
But confidence doesn't usually come from waiting. It comes from speaking. The first conversation feels awkward. The second one probably does too. But after 20 conversations, you stop worrying about every little mistake.
Exactly. The conversations create the confidence, not the other way around.
The same thing happened with your cooking. You didn't suddenly become confident one evening. You cooked, made mistakes, cooked again. Little by little, confidence appeared.
That's true. If I'd waited until I felt like a great cook, I'd probably still be ordering takeout every night.
And I'd still be walking past the music school.
There's another useful expression that fits perfectly here. Give it a try. When you give something a try, you simply try it. You're not expecting perfection. You're just willing to begin. And another expression we've almost been using all day is take the first step. Sometimes the first step is the hardest one, not because it's physically difficult, but because it means leaving what's familiar.
Which brings us to another phrase, comfort zone. That's where everything feels safe, predictable, familiar. Walking past the music school every Tuesday, that was my comfort zone. Walking through the door wasn't.
The interesting thing is, there's nothing wrong with having a comfort zone. We all need one. The problem is expecting our lives to change while never leaving it.
I think that's why people sometimes feel stuck for years. Not because they're lazy, not because they aren't capable, because staying where they are feels easier than taking one uncomfortable step.
And that's completely human. Our brains like familiar things. They like routines. They like certainty. Trying something new always feels a little uncertain.
But maybe that's exactly where progress begins. Not when we feel comfortable, when we decide that being uncomfortable for a little while is worth it.
I love that. Real progress usually doesn't happen in one giant leap. It happens one lesson, one conversation, one small decision at a time.
You know, that makes me wonder, what would happen if someone actually took that first step today and simply kept going for a year? Not perfectly, just consistently.
Let's imagine that together. You decide to begin something you've been putting off. What do you think life looks like 1 year from now?
People often imagine dramatic transformations. A new career, perfect English, playing beautiful music, running marathons. But real life usually changes much more quietly.
Let's imagine someone learning English. They don't study for 4 hours every day. They simply listen to a podcast while driving to work, read a few pages before bed, speak whenever they have the chance. Some days they do more, some days they do less, but they don't stop.
One step at a time.
A year later, they still make mistakes. They still forget words sometimes. They still ask people to repeat things. But something has changed. English isn't something they're afraid of anymore. It's become part of their everyday life.
That's what make progress really means. People often think progress has to be dramatic, but sometimes progress is simply realizing you're doing things today that seemed impossible a year ago.
And the funny thing is, you rarely notice it while it's happening. One conversation doesn't change your life. Neither does one lesson or one book. But hundreds of small moments quietly do.
Let's imagine another person. They've always wanted to learn the guitar. Not because they dream of becoming famous. They simply love music. So they finally sign up for lessons. At first, their fingers hurt. They play the wrong notes. They forget the chords. Sometimes they even think about quitting.
But they keep showing up, week after week. Not because every lesson is amazing, because they've decided that showing up matters more than being perfect.
Exactly. A year later, they're not giving concerts, but they can sit in their living room, play a few songs, and enjoy themselves. The biggest difference isn't how well they play. It's that they no longer say, "I wish I'd started."
I think that's beautiful. The sentence changes from, "One day I'll do it," to, "I'm doing it." Sometimes that's the biggest victory of all.
You know, when I think about it now, The biggest mistake wasn't waiting for 2 years. The biggest mistake would have been waiting for another 2.
Exactly. Because today might not completely change your life. Most days don't. But today's decision can quietly change where you are a year from now.
And maybe that's the real secret. You don't need an extraordinary beginning. You just need a beginning.
So, Jack, did you finally walk into the music school?
One Tuesday after work, everything started exactly the same. I walked past the building. I looked through the window. I almost kept walking. Then I stopped. I remember thinking, if I don't do it today, I'll probably be standing in this exact same place next year. I didn't want another year to pass. So, I took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked inside.
What happened next?
Honestly, almost nothing. A teacher looked up, smiled, and said, "Hi, welcome." That's it. No dramatic music, no surprised faces. Nobody asked, "Why did it take you so long?" Nobody cared that I was a beginner.
After everything you'd imagined? That sounds surprisingly ordinary.
I'd spent 2 years worrying about something that lasted less than 10 seconds. We talked for a few minutes. She showed me around. I signed up for beginner lessons, and before I knew it, I had my first class the following week.
So, how did the first lesson go?
Let's just say I wasn't a natural. My fingers hurt after 10 minutes. I kept playing the wrong chord. The teacher corrected me more times than I can remember.
That sounds like a very normal first lesson.
That's what surprised me most. Everyone in that room had once sounded exactly like me. Nobody expected perfection. They expected beginners to make mistakes.
Sometimes we expect our first attempt to look like someone else's 10th year, when really, it's supposed to look like a first attempt.
That's what finally changed my thinking. The hardest part wasn't learning the guitar. It wasn't practicing. It wasn't making mistakes. The hardest part was opening the door. Everything after that was simply practice.
I really like that, because I don't think this story is only about music. I think everyone has their own door. For some people, it's speaking English for the first time. For someone else, it's applying for a new job, or joining a gym, or starting something they've dreamed about for years.
Looking back, I'm not proud because I became a great guitarist. I'm proud because I finally stopped asking, "What if?" and started asking, "What's next?"
I think that's a wonderful place to finish your story. You know, when we started today's conversation, I thought we were going to talk about learning the guitar.
Me too. But somewhere along the way, it became a conversation about something much bigger.
What do you think that was?
I think it was about the stories we believe. I'm too late. I'm not ready. Everyone else is ahead of me. For a long time, I thought those were facts. Now I realize they were simply thoughts that I'd repeated so often they started to sound true.
I think many of us do exactly the same thing. We don't question those thoughts. We simply live with them, sometimes for years.
And while we're waiting, life quietly keeps moving. That's probably the saddest part. Not that we fail, but that we never give ourselves the chance to begin.
You know what stayed with me today? It wasn't really the music school. It was something you said much earlier. You weren't afraid of learning the guitar. You were afraid of being a beginner.
That's true. And I think almost every dream starts with that feeling. Whether it's learning English, changing careers, starting a business, traveling alone, or trying a new hobby. Nobody enjoys being a beginner. But everyone who becomes good at something starts there.
Maybe feeling uncomfortable isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's a sign that you're growing.
And maybe we don't need to stop asking, "Am I too late?" Maybe we just need to ask a better question. What's one small step I can take today? Because that's the only step we can actually control.
Exactly. You don't have to finish the whole journey today. Sometimes all you need is the courage to open one door. The rest can come later.
Before we say goodbye, we'd love to ask you something. What's one thing you've been waiting to begin? Maybe it's improving your English, learning a new skill, reading more, meeting new people, or finally starting something you've been thinking about for years. Tell us in the comments. We'd genuinely love to hear your story.
And if you enjoyed today's cozy conversation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Cozy English Corner. Every week, we share relaxed English conversations designed to help you improve naturally while talking about real life.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Take care of yourself, keep learning, and remember, the perfect moment may never arrive, but today is still earlier than tomorrow.
We'll see you in the next episode. Stay cozy.
Bye!